What is going on, guys? Gaston right here, and into this video I have my friend James Jackson, cinematography, and a guy that knows a lot about the things that I don't know that well. So I actually pre-ordered the FX6 and I own the A7S3, so I have a couple of points that we're going to be discussing, something that I put together. James, thank you for being here in the channel.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
So, you know, I was telling you that, you know, I own the Sony A7S3 and I really like that camera, right? And you were telling me that now people with the Sony A7S3, they're going to be like, oh my God, you know, what do I do now? You know, should I go return it? So why did you say that?
Okay, so I was looking at, basically, one of the things that I was sort of, it goes back to when the A7S3 was first announced. Like, I thought the camera was cool. I really liked the camera when they first announced it. But one of the biggest problems I always had was, like, it's, in terms of features that it's offering, I was thinking it won't take long before Sony puts out another camera that will offer those features, but maybe even in a video body and offer more video-centric specs. And then, which basically neutralizes all the great things about the A7S3. And then, what I was also saying is, well, what I've been saying for a while is, well, what happens when all of a sudden you got the later alpha cameras like this, specifically the Sony A7 IV, when it comes out with its features, if you're someone who is, even if you delve in sort of more of a hybrid side, from a video perspective, I was looking at it in terms of a cost savings perspective. Yeah, while yes, the FX6, which by the way, I know a lot of people think I always come down hard on Sony. I don't. I mean, I don't really. I just find certain things interesting. But
Canon fanboy right here.
No, honestly, trust me, I come down on Canon as well. But I just come from a background of Canon, so if there's a bit biased that way, I guess people could take it that way. But I really love the FX6. I really love what Sony is offering with that camera. But the point I'm trying to make is, if me as a purely as a video shooter, I don't see a reason to go get the A7S III over the FX6.
I want to give you the reasons why. All right, and this is where we disagree.
Oh no, yeah, we had a long.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Go ahead, give it to me, man.
So you know, I am not a cinematographer. You know, I'm a content creator. I run a YouTube channel. I make a lot of social media videos for my companies and also for customers, and videos that usually end up on the web. I don't do movies. I don't do documentaries. I do interviews from time to time. So, you know, having a camera like the Sony A7S3 that is portable, that I can actually carry with a couple lenses and be shooting, you know, in no time, is really, really important to me. The FX6 comes in right after the Sony A7S3. And before I consider the Sony A7S3, I was thinking about the FX9. But then I'm like, but the FX9 is kind of like that bulky camera, big camera that, hey, it's a great freaking camera. You know, I have friends that have it and they love it. But, you know, for my line of work, you know, I need something that is a little bit more portable. Now, one of the things that made me pull the trigger on the FX6, because I pre-ordered it today, are two things. The number one thing is variable ND filters, electronic. Now those filters that come in and pop in and you see the transition, you can graduate the entire range. And the other thing is that, you know, the XLR input. If I'm going to be doing an interview, I'm going to be booming, you know, a shotgun microphone, you know, I'm going to need phantom power. And the way I've been overcoming this since my GH5 is with the XLR, you know, adapter in the camera. And we were talking, if you have to invest in an XLR adapter like the one that Sony makes, I believe goes for around $600 or $700, and then you have to invest in a good quality ND system for cinema, I mean, you're going to end up spending probably a couple of grand, and at that point,
you're pretty much paying for the FS6.
You already have the FX6, so I'm like, and it is small because it's still like this, you know, it's still kind of like the size of.
You're making my argument, man.
Yeah, it's not a mirror. It's not a mirrorless still camera body, but it's still, you know, fairly small camera that if you want to.
Yeah, it's 2 pounds. It's like two.
Yeah.
It weighs almost nothing.
Less than a lens.
Yeah.
Less than, I have lenses that are heavier there. So, that was the thing, like if I have to go to an interview, I'm not going to take right now the Sony A7S3. I'm going to take the FX6. If I have to sit down there, like I put 2 microphones and I can film, during the day with no problem. And this is one of the problems that I run right here in Miami, especially when you shoot in the outdoors. Tropical weather, it's cloudy, it's sunny, it's cloudy, it's sunny, and exposure changes all the time. And, unscrewing ND filters, replacing ND filters, putting rinse adapters, leaving fingerprints, getting your sensor dirty.
No, yeah, look, I will say this, when I put out my video yesterday, one of the things I definitely said was, if there was one thing that the Sony A7S III has, is that it's still light and portable, that especially if you need to get into certain areas where you can't be conspicuously carrying what looks like a video camera. Yeah, the Sony A7S III still has a place for there. But, and I'm going to throw this to you.
Yeah.
You've been talking about I know you've been talking about the Sony A7 IV on your channel recently.
Yes.
If you pre-ordered the FX6, now with you knowing potentially, I mean, obviously everything is just rumored right now with the Sony A7 IV.
Of course.
But if the rumors are true, which is 4K 60, it's got the flip out screen, it's going to have maybe not as bright and powerful as EVF, but still a decent VVF, solid screen. It's going to if it has touch focus like the A7S III. But it's a 32 megapixel sensor.
Yeah.
In that situation, if you got the FX6, between the Sony A7S III and the A7 IV, which also will likely be cheaper than the A7S III.
For sure.
In terms of a secondary camera that you may use for video content with your FX6, what would you personally would go with? Because I know I would look at that as sort of the A7 IV, because it's offering features like oversampled 4K that the A7S can't offer.
I will go with the Sony A7S III, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. The Sony A7S III is, in my opinion, kind of like a mini cinema camera. A 32 megapixel, one of the things that I'm actually concerned, and I mentioned in my last video about the Sony A7 IV, the latest leak, is if it has a 32 megapixel, what it made the Sony A7 III so great was the 24 megapixel. And I know that there's not a lot of megapixel, but it could be maybe 6 extra megapixel. Is that going to affect the dynamic range? And this is one of the reasons why I bought the Sony A7S III, and one of the reasons why I'm going with the Sony FX6. The Sony A7S III definitely has better dynamic range, in my opinion, than the Sony, A7 III. I mean, you also have 10-bit, right?
Yeah, so that plays a big part of that dynamic range.
So you also have 10-bit. So I would have to see if the camera is going to be similar to the Sony A7S III, but one of the things that I've been using is 4K 120. Mm-hmm. 4K 120, I just love it. I love it. And the fact that both cameras have 4K 120, mm-hmm. It's great. And, I just get peakier as I get better with my videos, and more specific.
Yeah, I mean, once you start pointing out and seeing flaws with cameras, you kind of get a little bit more pickier about it. I mean, I love 4K 120 too. That's why one of the reasons why I love about my R5 is the 4K 120. But I guess for me, I know we got other topics, so I'll just do this last point. For me, I look at it as like, okay, for slow mo, I got the FX6 because it's got great slow mo, just the same good slow mo as the Sony A7S III. For me, I'm like, okay, what do I get? When I get a secondary camera, I look at what are things that are missing from the main camera, from my A camera. Okay, good, maybe a better quality looking 4K. Okay, Sony A7 IV would do that. I know dynamic range would be, but honestly, if it goes 10-bit, like I think we all think it should be, I think at this point in time it should be, the dynamic range will probably most likely be the same, especially if you're oversampling, because this oversampling kills a lot of the noise. Maybe the noise won't be as clean as the A7S III, but I think it will be close enough. But again, we don't even know what the megapixels is. We just know rumors have said that. And then finally, it is if I want to go and take a pictures, or I want to do pictures that I have a lot more room with 24, 32, 30, whatever higher megapixels than with 12 megapixels. So I have a little bit more variety with an A7 IV comboed with the FX6. But I know that's just me. I'm looking at purely from a video shooter. Yeah. That's why I got the R5, and I'm looking to I have the C200 right now, but I'm looking to get the C70. That one shoots 4K, but it's got great dynamic range. It's got a great sensor technology that can do great in low light. This camera is a detailed beast and also has great 4K 120, and it's full frame. So I like cameras that give me different options.
Yeah, no, I get it right there. And when I got the Canon EOS R5, while everyone was getting that camera for video, I got it for photos. I don't think I ever shot a single video that I published with the Canon EOS R5 because I was in love with the still features that the camera offers. And in my opinion, I think it's way better than any Sony camera out there. And I'm a Sony fanboy, not a fanboy. I'm actually a fanboy of results. I like to shoot with things that work for me, and Sony has done the job.
If it works, hey, good. That's enough.
Yeah, but the Canon EOS R5, man, I just love the ergonomics. I love the menus. I love the touchscreen. I hate the touchscreen of the Sony A7S3, and even though everyone is saying, we have a new menu, I think the new menu sucks. I think the new menu is worse than the menu before. Because at least before, you could actually cycle through and go through all of them. Right now, they nest in a way that sometimes it's hard to go back, and it's just kind of like maybe they're too small.
It's very Panasonic.
The GH5, I think Panasonics are better.
Knowing the layout of the Sony FX6, let's just say ergonomics is definitely one of my big issues with the FX6. I mean, the design of it, I'm not having a problem with. It's the button layout. It's like, it's all over the place. Whereas, like, the C70 and the C200, all the buttons are they're placed where you think they should be placed. They're easy to access, and it's like, okay, what's this one does? Or do I need to go here? And, do I need to take other steps to get to that one?
Yeah.
It's just, I've never liked the layouts of the Sony's Cine Pro video cameras. They're just very clunky.
Let me tell you a couple of things that I completely dislike about the Sony FX6, and I don't even have it, but I already have done my research, and I think that kind of like Sony overlooked that, and it could have been an even better camera. A couple of things. Now, the handle is the only way for you to get the 2XLR. So if you don't have the handle and you want to, let's say, just run small with the camera in your hand and connect a microphone or something like that, you don't even have a hot shoot on the body, and you don't even have a 3.5 microphone input. So you're out of audio. You're only, left out with a tiny little onboard microphone, which completely sucks.
Yeah, no, that was one of the weirdest things I did, because the FS5 actually had at least one XLR input on the body itself, and for some reason they took it off, and I'm baffled by that, because I'm like, you've taken a step back all the way to like the C100 Mark II, C300 Mark II days where you had all the audio there.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that, and I actually put a little list about the things that I like about the Sony A7S3 and the things that I don't like about the FX6. So I just want to run through this really quick, because I'm sure that these are the most common questions that people are going to have. So we're going to start why the Sony A7S3 is a great camera, and for some people it may be an even better camera than the FX6. So number one, great quality, and it costs you a lot less. It's almost not half of the price, but it's a lot less money. $3,100 versus $6,000. So that's a pretty penny. So also, the Sony A7S3 is an easier camera to fly on gimbals, and if you're going to be a person that's going to be shooting handheld, you're going to be popping the camera in a gimbal, well, you're going to have, a much better time with the Sony A7S3, and there are going to be more gimbals that are going to be able to sustain the weight of the camera, plus the lens. Even though the other camera is not as heavy, the Sony A7S3 is a lot lighter than 2 pounds, or at least that's what I think. Mm-hmm. Also, number 4, if you are eyeing the Sony FX6 because all the features and all the video features, well, guess what? It's pretty much the same features as the Sony A7S3. The only thing that we don't have in the Sony A7S3 is Cine. That kind of like gives you a cinematic graded footage. I'm assuming that Sony may now introduce that via firmware update now that the FX6 is out.
That's possible.
It's very possible because, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much maybe even the same sensor. Also, easy to traveling with. If you just put the camera in a backpack and you're done. If you're going to be traveling with the FX6, you're going to have to bring that suitcase because, if you want to have a microphone, you need the handle. If you want a hot shoe, you're going to need the handle and all the accessories that it brings. So end up being like a big, like little big case.
Hey, if I get the FX6, I'm going to try it because I'm pretty positive I can put it in my satchel bag with everything in it. The side handle, the top.
I will try that.
I'm pretty positive you can put it in a satchel. It's small enough.
I will try that. And let's do a deal. If I get when I get the FX9, because I already ordered it, and you get the C70, we're gonna trade. I'll send you the camera, and you let me try yours, and we'll see how we feel about both cameras.
All right.
The other thing that I like about the Sony A7S3 is a still camera too. So if you want to bring one camera to capture picture for your services or your food or your products on social media, 12 megapixel is plenty, buddy. Plenty for social media and even plenty for catalogs and a magazine cover. So you have still capabilities where you don't have it on the FX6. Also, I mentioned before the hot shoe mount. If you want to, maybe put a lavalier and you're not going to be using the XLR, well, you need to have the handle because if you're going to use the Sony microphone that connects through the Sony lavalier that connects through the hot shoe, then you're going to need to put the handle. And I think that they should have put one hot shoe in the body and at least a 3.5 in the body. They should have done that without having to rely on the handle.
I think what they could have done is they could have done what, and I don't know why they didn't, what Canon does. What Canon has is sort of a shock mount. They have a shock mount that you can literally screw to the body itself, and obviously the XLRs are like into the body.
Maybe they come up with an accessory that actually plugs in place of the handle without being so big.
Yeah.
That would be really nice. Also, the screen of the A7S3 is attached to the camera, and if you don't want it, you flip it over, and that's it. There's no screen. Now, in the FX6, if you want the screen, obviously you have to rig it up and mount in different points. I wish I have that in the Sony A7S3, right? But for someone that is going to be doing content creation, wants to capture great footage and have something easy, really quick and easy to deploy, I think the Sony A7S3 wins in that department. Number 12, because I had numbers. Number 12. If you really like the touch to focus from Sony, by far the Sony A7S3 has a better implementation because the FX6, you actually have to enable that mode.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you have to tap on the screen. And for what I've seen, it's pretty slow,
Yeah, video cameras for some reason have not. I think the closest one that's going to be doing that is actually the C70 because the C2, all the Canon cameras are the same way too. At least the bigger cinema cameras. Only Red, I think even Red's touchscreen is a little bit clunky, but it's probably one of the better ones in terms of cinema video cameras. But yeah, like even the C200, which is a touchscreen but it's only touch to focus. But what I can do on the R5, it's like I could just tap it and I'm good.
Also, if you want straight stabilized footage out of the camera, well, look no further. The Sony A7S3 has, a rock-solid image stabilization, by far the best from any Sony cameras, and from the A7 R2, R3, R4, A7 III,
kind of
A6600. There's no other better image stabilization than the one on the Sony A7S3, and I hope that this is the image stabilization that we're going to get in the A7 IV, because it's really usable handheld. It's really usable for vlogging if you want to vlog with a $4,000 camera, but it really does a really good job. And also, you still have that dual ISO that Sony did not wanted to mention, when they released that camera. But I mean, it basically kicks in at the same time. At 12,800, you get a much cleaner image. And the other day, last Sunday, I was shooting that. I'm still editing that video. I was shooting in almost pitch dark, and I went to the 12,800, and yes, indeed, looking through the EVF, you can clearly see, the image being completely out of, completely free of, almost free of noise.
In terms of image stabilization, well, we also got to be frank about it. Sony kind of set the bar a little bit low in terms of their IS compared to others. I mean, for the longest time, Panasonic has been number one, and I would still say they're kind of neck and neck with Canon in terms of their audio image stabilization. And at least from my reports, Sony's has always been like, I never have trusted their IBIS, honestly. But at the same time, I'm someone who also feels IBIS is probably the most overrated feature. But that's just me personally, because as good as IBIS has gotten, and I think in certain situations for video, it's I think it can hold its own and be better. Things like when you really just have to hold it and take stills and do like a pan shot. But once you start adding three-dimensional movements, it doesn't beat a gimbal or beat a stabilizer.
Oh no, of course. I'm not saying that the IBIS is gonna beat a gimbal, and a reason why I use a lot of gimbals, when I have to shoot really steady footage. But I'm saying, like, if you really need to get something with your hands really quick, capture some B-roll for a commercial or stuff like that, and you want to do hand motion, it may be good. I mean, also maybe even better to turn in the IBIS completely off, and at that point using the gyro data, which I actually did, and it's something that I like, about the Sony A7Siii, but not something that I can see myself doing it all the time, because when I shoot a video, I end up with tons of clips, a lot of B-roll, and I cannot imagine myself having to go and
it's very time consuming.
These are the reasons why I consider the Sony A7Siii is not going to change my mind about the FX6, or the FX6 is not going to change my mind about the Sony A7Siii, because the Sony FX6 brings what I mentioned before, the built-in variable ND filter. That is freaking awesome. That is gonna save you so much time, and every time you change a lens, every time you unscrew,
it's time consuming.
And you put fingerprints, dust, and things can go wrong.
And
just to say, boom boom, and the auto ND, bro, come on, man.
No, that's one of the things I've always, at least I give credit to Sony and praise Sony about this ergonomics. I get on them about their design, a lot of the design, their button layouts, and their menus, but the variable ND has been probably one of their best features they've offered on their pro video cameras, because not only you get the smooth gradients that you can control, but then you also get the auto ND, which are auto exposure. Still not a fan of auto exposure. Just me being kind of the old school, just being trying to do things manually for the most part. But it's there. It is there, and I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad Sony's taking advantage. Like, you've talked about it with the C70. Like, one of the best things about the C70 was the fact that it had built-in NDs in it. And which, by the way,
it's such a small camera.
Yeah, and the C70 actually, and funny enough, the C70 actually has more stops of NDs than the
10.
Yeah. But even still, having that gradients for the FX7, like, that alone to me is like why I say I would always, even if I'm filming things, I would if I had like an A7S3 or an FX6, I would be grabbing the FX6 every single time, just because I don't want to deal with the headache of screwing on an ND. I could just go on, take my lenses, screw on, put it on, do the ND, shoot, go. And then especially with the dual native sensitivity, because you have that really murky mid between like 6,000 and 10,000, where the noise is just bad. It's just bad. But now you can go to 12,000 and you don't even have to worry about screwing on DD. It's like, okay. So if it's so if it's in a lower lit situation, but you want to blow it and it blows it out, well, now you can just scroll it down.
Yeah. And one thing that I mentioned in our other video that we had before, watch Sony or Canon introducing variable NDs built in on still cameras. that is going to be a thing.
I'm still waiting. See,
for sure.
now I'll say this: if
sure.
Sony had done that with the A7S3, I would be heaping and praising it, and through to his. But I'm waiting. We'll still wait. Because I think Sony's still the only one that offers the electronic ND. Well, no, I think Zcam has their own sort of version of the electronic NDs, but.
But anyways, you know, I'm actually excited about that camera, and I don't feel bad about, you know, because I had pre-ordered the C70, but, you know, I just couldn't pass, you know, the gripe that I had.
Frame. I know, because that was the biggest gripe that you had, was the full.
Yeah.
The fact that it was a mount system that basically had full frame glass, but it was a Super 30 size sensor, and I totally get it. Like, when I saw that Sony finally announced this, and I was like, this is Gaston's camera. This is the camera Gaston was looking for, because it's like, it was a full frame camera with a mirrorless mount system and then you can just go through transits. So I totally get you, man. I totally get you on that. Like I said, Super 35 is not a big deal for me, because I still have EF glass, and then I can use the speed booster adapter that Canon's coming with, and again, take advantage of full frame. And then also, but I can also still get RF glasses if I want to, because sometimes for me, from a video shooter, I know this may not necessarily be, for most photographers, this is not necessarily the case, but at least for me, sometimes depth of field is shallow depth of field is a bit too much, especially when filmmaking. It should, at the end of the day, depth of field and all this other stuff should be artistic choices. You know, your parameters should be designed to give you the best settings make sure to get the shot you need for your project. So, and for me, a lot of times I'm shooting at f4, f5.6, even f8, because a lot of times I'm still dealing with cinema. Well, I can't do, no, not dual pixel. Well, maybe Black Magic. Okay, maybe if it was the Black Magic, then yeah. But no, because I'm dealing with cinema glass and I'm pulling stuff manually. And trying to pull 1.2 on a Cine on a manual focus on 1.2, it's not fun when you're trying. So I'm really, really hopefully excited for it. This has been a great discussion, man. I think we need to continue doing this.
So guys, unfortunately I have to stop the video right here. I'm about to finish the video, and the last 2 minutes of the video I completely lost my own audio. I don't know what happened with that. Maybe the microphone got disconnected or something like that. But anyway, I would like to thank James Jackson for being here with me in this video. Go follow him at James Jackson Film in YouTube. He knows his stuff. He has a cinematography and gear review channel, so please go follow him. And as always, guys, let us know what you think about the FX6 A7S III. Drop your comments down below, and as always, guys, I will see you in the next video.